You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. Welcome back to another episode of Changing Reality. If you missed the introduction for today, well, you missed an amazing intro to the person that will probably inspire you or at least keep you going for the next 1 week, whether it's doing your exams for your finals or whether it's playing games on Google Play. Because we have none other than Albert Cheng, who is the head of global marketing at Google Play himself. So, Albert, if you're here, do unmute. How are you feeling today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. I am so amazed by your story, and I thought that it's something that we have to share with as many people as we can. So I think getting right into it. Thank you once again for joining us here today. You have had a phenomenal career in marketing in Google, but I think all of us are so eager to see or to hear where did you start in all of this? I think you started off as a bachelor student here in Penn, right?
That's right. I was an MNT student at Penn. I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to do when I started Penn. I felt like I was going to do bioengineering. I was going to study entrepreneurial management at Wharton. But of course, once you hit freshman year, all of that changes. And for a while, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But eventually, I settled on electrical engineering at Penn before going off to work to the workplace.
Okay, wow, cool. So you studied electrical engineering. Today you do something completely different. But after you graduated from Penn, I think you didn't actually go right into engineering, right? I think you actually went into working at an investment banking firm.
That's right. I don't know how it is now at Penn. I imagine it's much more diverse in terms of the types of careers people start right after college. But in my time, it was a lot of, because of Wharton, it's a lot of consulting and banking. And so, not knowing any better, I sort of just followed the herd and also just followed my interest a bit because I was interested in technology. I was interested in economics and business, and so they had a great pitch about the merging of the two at the investment bank I started at, which was a boutique technology investment bank. So that's where I started.
Okay, cool, cool. And you started in this field, which I think is really, really hard. And other than being someone who ranked top in your class, you actually went to this investment banking firm and you brought in, I think, transactions totaling in more than 12 billion US dollars, which is huge. So, how did your career really progress from there? How did you grow from there, in a sense? What was the next step in your career?
It was really crazy ride because it was in the middle of the dot-com bubble, and so it was both the expansion of the bubble and also the popping of the bubble as well. So on the way up, you get a tremendous amount of responsibility. You get to work on a number of different transactions, and you get to do stuff that normally they wouldn't give a kid the responsibility to do. And then on the downside, it's like you see the industry shrink as well, and so people have to find new jobs, and the size of the firm shrinks as well. But I knew that I liked working with early stage companies, and so that's when I made the transition from investment banking into venture capital. And so I wanted to, because I had an aspiration to eventually start my own company one day, to just to work more closely with the early stage companies. And so I joined IVP, which is a venture capital firm for focusing on growth stage companies.
Okay, cool. And there itself, I think you were the youngest person of a six-person investment team, and that itself is, I think, a huge achievement. So, how did you even get this position in a sense? Like, I think all of us young people are very eager to go out there, make decisions, and kind of like be part of something big. But what made you stand out from everyone else your age or everyone else around that time so that you got this awesome role in a sense?
It helped that I was genuinely interested in the companies that they were interested in. Um, I got to know and work with a lot of the management teams at these early stage companies. I knew a lot about the technology and the competitive landscape as part of my job, and so I can speak credibly to it. And so if it happens with any subject where you have an interest, you read up on it, you think a little bit more about it than the next person, and then I think that shows when you go interview, when people ask what are your thoughts, versus and you're able to reply with something that is truly original versus maybe just something you read the night before, regarding the subject.
Ooh, truly original. I think that's the challenge for everyone, right? So there's actually one of the kind of questions from the audience that I thought that we had when they RSVP'd to join in for a session. But so how did you know that this was something that you wanted to pursue, that you were passionate about? Or was it just something that you woke up one day and was like, hey, you know what, this sounds cool? Or have you always known that this was the field for you?
I've always been attracted to technology, and the technology space is pretty different now than it used to be, but and it was much more technical as well, and so there weren't as many consumer-oriented products. But what I liked about it the most was probably the rate of change. And so, the internet was new to everyone at the time. No one had smartphones.
Okay,
Everyone was
sorry.
predicting what would right, a long time ago. Um, but everyone was predicting how the internet could change the world, and we're seeing today how internet changes the world, still, right? And so, whether it is things like Discord or things like mobile games or things like Bitcoin, those are examples of Bitcoin continuously changing the world. And what I was interested in was, what attracted to me about the industry was that you could become in short order an expert in this area just from because there are no 20 at the time there were no 20-year experts on the internet, and there was no playbook on how to assess these companies or these this is the X, Y, and Z of how to run your company or launch this product. It was all new, and so when it's everything is so dynamic and new, that means a young person has value to add, right? Because they don't have the disadvantage of not being in the industry for the last 20 years. But if they've been in the industry for the last 1 to 2 years, then they can be an expert and their opinions can be valued.
Okay, that is so amazing. So let me get this picture straight in my mind. So the internet is new, which itself is such a weird concept to me, but it's a new thing. Smartphones haven't been invented yet. And you, as a young person who was the youngest member of this team in venture capital, which is itself a hard field to break into, was kind of like the go to expert in a sense for all things tech or internet related in a sense. How did you handle that kind of pressure or knowing that your opinions were valid since there was no other expert around, like, and you were the in-house expert in a sense?
I wouldn't say I was the only expert, but they often sent me to learn more about an area, right? And so I think it's always um, a special situation when older people and more important people, quote unquote, care about your opinion. And so they would trust me to do research and diligence, talk with companies, talk with the other companies that were competing with the companies in our space, talk with customers, et cetera, and just gather a lot of data. But then along the way, I could also provide my own perspective, and they can take it or leave it, but at least I got the opportunity to also share my thoughts as well.
Okay, wow, wow. And I think like one of the issues that I personally have heard from many adults in today's age is that not that students or youngsters don't have thoughts, it's just that their opinions aren't really I don't know, they lack the experience to actually articulate their opinions or have valuable opinions, which personally is really sad for someone like me. But what do you think about that? Like does experience definitely matters, but is there, what happens when you don't have enough experience in a sense? Are you still a valuable member of a team, or do I have to spend the next 20 years in I don't know, study in solitude before I can express what I have in mind?
I think the great part about the experiences I had were that people were open to my opinions and ideas. And I think I would encourage people to, if you feel stifled in your future careers and future jobs, I would think a little bit about why you're being stifled. Is it because you're wrong all the time, which can be the case, or is it just a negative function of the culture? And maybe that's not the best place for you. Um,
Hmm.
I think like just recent history has shown that it doesn't take a ton of experience, but it can take expertise, which is different from experience, which is less a function of time. And the other benefit of technology is that you can often try things and fail, and try things and succeed very, very quickly. And so even if you don't have the right answer right away, if you can get to the right answer quickly, then the market can validate you versus an organization needing to validate you.
Okay, that's pretty nice in a sense. It's a relief to know that I don't have to wait till I've got years and years of experience, but instead can just focus on expertise. And back to your story, in a sense, somewhere at this point of in your career, I think you decided to do an MBA at Wharton in marketing and finance. Why? Like, was it just like on your bucket list, or did you have a plan of what you wanted to study and all?
Well, I did have a plan. I didn't necessarily stick to the plan, but I mentioned that I wanted to start my own company at some point, but I realized my conception of a company was really rooted in Excel and in PowerPoint, right? And so in bullet points or line items on a spreadsheet, but with no concept of actually how to turn an idea into reality or turn a strategy, to actually execute a strategy. But the bullet point might sound great, but how do you actually go and do it? And if you wanted to start your own company, you'd actually have to know, or actually go and do these things versus talking about what might be a good idea. And so I thought it would be a great idea to use the MBA to not just transition to a role, what is commonly referred to as an operating role within a company, but also explore working in China, which I thought my future career might be in, given the dynamic growth that we were seeing then.
Okay. And did this plan work out? Did you actually go to China, get your dream enterprise started up, or how did things pan out from there?
Well, I really liked the experience working in a company. I worked for a division of Yahoo in China, and it was an amazing experience. I learned a ton about how these companies operate. I also met a lot of really interesting people, but I also learned that maybe China wasn't the right place for me in terms of starting my career there, or um, building my like business career there. And for a variety of personal and professional reasons, I felt like I'd be more successful back in the States. And so that in itself was valuable to me in just knowing that before I graduated versus after I graduated.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So for all of us who are probably have a plan or have something that we want to do, but we're not sure if it's going to work out. Like you, like in this space, you've got like the perspective of hindsight. Like you can look backwards. But for all of us who right now want to try something or move to a different country, what's your kind of advice on that? Looking back now.
I think go and try it. I think like it becomes harder to try later. I think when you are younger, you can take unpaid internships. You can take low paid internships and jobs. You can travel to a new country, meet a lot of new people. You don't yet have, let's say, a mortgage or a lot of um, family responsibilities that limit the scope of what you want to do. And it's also for you to eventually figure out for yourself like what truly motivates you, what do you value in your career and in your profession, as well as what do you value in your personal life. Some people have learned that they really value their family life, and so that is sacrosanct in terms of how they choose a career. But you might not find that. If you find that out much later in life, I think you'll lose the opportunity to focus yourself towards the things that you really care about.
Okay, wow. And okay, that is definitely something that I think unfortunately comes with experience. And it was at this point in your career, I guess you continued working in the States from there on. And after you completed your MBA, I think you started off as a product marketing manager at Google. Now, I've got to ask, you were in Yahoo, then you were in Google. Was this some kind of like CIA, like double agent stuff where you sold the secrets of trade? Or like, how did it happen? How did you transition over to like from one giant to another?
It's a bit hard to believe now, but Yahoo was a giant back in those days, and Google was a much smaller company.
Really? Okay,
But
sorry.
yes, like Yahoo definitely had more employees than Google at the time, even though like Google was the rising star, and Google was just more exciting to me in terms of the things that Google was doing, even though it had many fewer products than Yahoo did at the time. But as a company, the company's creativity and culture and positioning just resonated with me much more than what I saw at Yahoo.
Hmm. But okay, but to imagine Google, no offense to Yahoo, but to imagine Google as not being the all encompassing force that it is today is again another concept that I need to take time to process. But on that topic, in a sense, like you jumped from, I guess, a bigger giant to something that, as you said, was up and coming. Wasn't that like scary? Like if it wasn't the Google we all know and hear about today, like, or why did you make that jump from, I would say, something more comfortable to something more exciting in a way?
I would couch it and say, like, to be clear, it wasn't a risk. Like Google was already a public
Oh.
company at the time, and it was very successful, and everyone could see that it was a strong trajectory there for Google. So definitely, I wasn't taking a risk, but I also didn't look at it as like a permanent position. I didn't think I would be there for the next 15 years. I remember my dad telling me that, like, oh, that's a great place to go. Maybe be there for 2 to 3 years and learn what you can, and then do something else. And I thought to myself at the time, I was like, wow, 2 to 3 years, that's like forever, and there's no way I'll be there for that long. And here I am, 15 years later, still at the same company.
Oh no, okay. We have to take a break soon and play a couple of songs. But before that, I have to ask. So, what made you stay in a sense, like, or were you just swept up in the excitement there, or did Google invent a time machine and then you accidentally forward yourself 15 years? Well, what happened?
Well, I'm a person who has a pretty short attention span when it comes to. I'm always looking for something, a new challenge to tackle. But thankfully, during my Google career, I've had to tackle things, at usually like, every like 12 to 18 months, there's something new for me to tackle, and so it never gets stale. Um, and even when there's something that I'm working on that is not that exciting, chances are there's something very exciting around the corner for me to work on. But what really, beyond the new challenges, what really keeps me here are the people in terms of the culture. And so, there's a lot of super talented people for whom, it's really inspiring to work alongside. And it's a very collaborative and helpful culture. And so that, I think, is not as easily found. And so um, it's something that I do value.
Okay, wow. That is a very, very nice way of putting it. And we will definitely talk more about it. I think we've just scratched the surface. But before that, we're going to take a short break for a song. Don't worry, guys. We'll be back to this story really, really soon before you even know it. But thank you so much. So now we're going to play another song that's actually from a gaming soundtrack. This is Warriors by Imagine Dragons. See you guys after the break in about 5 minutes.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world.
Okay, welcome back to Changing Reality. We have with us here today the head of global marketing at Google Play, Albert Cheng. And thank you so much for the first half of this interview. I think it was just very lovely to hear your experiences, how you started off as a student, but eventually grew into a career, became kind of an expert at your time, and then today now is someone who is a huge figure in Google. But again, I think you started off as a product marketing manager, right? So how was Google like, or how were you like when you first started there?
like I didn't know anything. Like I hadn't really done any marketing before I started at Google, and the marketing organization also at the time was pretty small. It's probably maybe like 1/30th of the size it is now, or even smaller. And we also had no budget, and so we were just a very different organization. But I think the nice thing was that people were like there were too few people to do everything, and so you got a lot of responsibility being a young person. I was still relatively young at the time, to do things that you normally in a bigger company you wouldn't get the chance to do. And so a lot of it was just learning on the job and trying to apply my best judgment with the help of really helpful teammates.
Okay, cool, cool. And you did some amazing stuff in the beginning, right off the bat. I think you co-founded Google Trends, which I think was called Google Insight or Google Ad Planner when it first started out. And as someone who, other than Ascendance, which I mentioned in the intro, runs a tech startup, I literally know some of my friends who are in the same startup space who use Google Trends like crazy. So again, they owe their success, they have their livelihoods to thank you for. But what was the story behind co-founding something that is so huge today?
Well, there was Google Trends, before, when I got to Google, but we wanted to make it much more powerful and make it something that wasn't just a curiosity, but something that people using these insights to understand consumers better, or to run their business better, or to plan their business, for it to actually be more useful. So at the time, you could only compare two terms at a time, and there was no y-axis in terms of understanding the search volume for any given term. These days, you have way more granularity. You can compare a whole bunch of different terms. You can filter out stuff, understand where in the world by city these things are resonating, filtered by category, et cetera. And so it becomes much more powerful in terms of understanding what people care about today.
Okay, and Google Trends is this amazing tool which I think so many people use today to find out which keywords are more searched, which how to compare things. And I remember you shared that there was an example about a hotel chain that actually named their hotel after using your tool. So they try to find which name would people search more, and through those tools, they actually managed to come up with a solution. So wow, that's amazing, and I feel like it's a great way at looking at how do you solve the problem without there being an existing problem. So you took something that already existed and you just made it better and better. Is that
Yeah.
something? Yeah, sorry.
No. To answer your earlier question, it was just about there's no particular rule book or guidebook as to how you make something like that happen. And so it's just about asking questions and saying like, okay, if we want to do this, who would need to approve it? Or what are the issues? And how do we get over those issues? And then you start just reaching out to people and calling around. And so we were meeting with folks like Marissa Meyer, who was head of consumer product management at the time. We were meeting with the heads of, the very senior most heads of engineering for search and for the company as well, trying to get approval for this stuff, because it is very sensitive material at the end of the day in terms of understanding our search volume. But those are the type of things that were part of the culture, and that if you want to make something happen, you just go out and try to make it happen. And chances are the people around you who are Googlers want to help you. And so that we'll see how they can help you.
Okay, so just focus on making it happen and kind of like understanding that you have the resources around you and just finding those resources to pull together to make whatever you're trying to do work. Okay, that's very interesting. And again, you didn't stop there. You grew in your career. I know you said that 2 years seemed very short, very long when you began, but today you actually grew all the way up to becoming head of Google Play's global marketing, which in itself is a huge, huge growth. But what, how did that even happen? Like, what was the core values about yourself? Or what were the strengths that you had that you felt propelled you forward, that moved you to achieve all of this?
I I think a lot of it is just luck. I think I had people who believed in me, and part of like working in a company is that you have to build your own credibility and show that you can get stuff done or make things happen, and 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 also jump on the opportunities as they come to be able to demonstrate that, right? And so I did a lot of moving around with projects earlier on, and I had done a lot of stuff in the ads world too, which is like the biggest part of the business for Google. But I did that for a while, and I was like, well, this is not that exciting anymore because I feel like I've done so much in this
You were
area.
the pro after a while.
No, not the pro, but I was just bored. I think I tried everything, and so I was eventually bored with everything. But I was reading a ton around app stores, Android versus iOS, just in my own free time, and that was just stuff I would read for just out of personal interest. And I thought it would be, the opportunity came up to work on Google Play, and I thought it was a great opportunity because here was a growing business, a lot of issues with the business in terms of things to fix so that it can really supercharge the growth of that business. I saw a lot of opportunity, but on what was already a successful product, and so um, I didn't start off as the head of global marketing there. I joined as a member of the marketing team, and I was lucky enough over time that where people had the trust in me to take on the bigger and bigger roles.
Okay, that's interesting. Very, very cool. And I would say now on the flip side, you being the person who has to trust your team and actually like make sure that everyone comes together for the best of Google Play itself. So how do you manage a global team and ensure high performance when again there's just so many people involved now and there's so many things that can go right and can go wrong? How do you manage everyone to get on the same page in a sense?
I think it's a lot of it's constant reinforcement of the strategy and also the vision of what we're trying to get to. I think it's also a certain humility that I'm not going to know as much about their business and their consumers and their developer partners as they would. So we have, I work very closely with our Korea team, for example, and I think I've been to Korea once since I've took on the role, and so how can I tell them like how to run, which developer to partner with, or which influencer to do a campaign with, and what the teens in Korea are going to respond to. I can't. There's no way I would be successful at telling them that. But there are things that we can align with, which is, what are the big business problems we're trying to go after? What are the tactics that we have shown that can make a difference in the global marketing, and what do we stand for as a brand that is universal across all regions and across the product globally, and what are the values of Google such that we don't violate those when we go to market. And for the rest, it's some fine tuning along the way, but we give local marketers a lot of freedom because we trust them that they will know their consumers and know how they resonate with the product.
All right. That I like that because many times so it's not something that you can micromanage. It's actually a lot of faith and trust that everyone kind of knows what they're doing. And in that, like, I'm just so curious. Do people who run Google Play also play the games on Google Play, or like, do you just find the best, highest ranking game and say, you know what, that's what we're gonna focus on promoting, or like, is there a secret formula that you guys process, or it's just what you like to play in a sense?
Well, I think we certainly want to promote things that people also like. And so I think it's really important for us, because we do so much games promotion, to actually play the games themselves. And so the example is like if you were in the music business and you were trying to promote the latest artists of today, I don't think you could be a great music promoter if the most recent music you listened to was Led Zeppelin or something, and you didn't know who Cardi B was, you didn't know who Kanye was, you didn't know who Drake was, etc. And I think as marketers, it's part of understanding the product in this sense, which is not always our product in Google, but the developer's product, which is the games themselves.
Okay. So you do play games and you do make sure that you're immersed in that world. That's a
So, it's a good excuse for me to play games because I've played games all my life, and now it's my job in some sense.
okay, all right. That's amazing. So does your team have like gaming sessions, or like when you guys game, are you like so focused on like all right, I've got to write a report on this, or like how does that work? You like doing it for your job in a sense.
But I do expect the marketers who are working with a particular game to have played it and know it really well, because I think gamers understand. I think whoever you're being marketed, whoever is trying to market to you, they understand that like you can sniff out a phony, right? And so in the games world, there are like plenty of people who are trying to appeal to youth or trying to feel like they are someone who's also interested in your passion as well. And if they don't really know, it becomes very transparent. And the last thing we want to do is come off as someone who is just trespassing in your passion.
So, all right, okay, that's very important. And I would say that this is $1 billion industry. I think almost everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon. So, authenticity, I'd say a certain amount of love for it is required. So, what is your advice for aspiring gamers out there, or for all of us who want to be part of this industry but can't beat our friends' high scores in League of Legends if it killed us? Like, are we hopeless? Is there no way we could fit into this gaming world?
Well, I think that to enter the games industry or to work in the games industry, you don't have to necessarily be great at games, right? I think,
Oh,
but you have
phew.
to have an interest in games. But I think also the world of games is more than just playing games or coding. It's much like Hollywood, where there's entire industries around the production of games, and so there's things that you would see in Hollywood like artists, actors, like producers, like entire marketing teams, promotional teams, esports production, live event production, influencer work. There's entire huge industries surrounding the creation and management of these games communities. And so chances are most people can find a role if they're passionate about games that they can add value in. I think a lot of folks coming from Penn may be interested in the business side because it is such a huge business. But of course, there's also plenty of opportunities for someone who's interested in visual arts to work in games as well. So really, it's a pretty broad field, and it's a lot wider than people realize.
And as you gave, I guess, the example of the music industry there, it helps at any aspect of this industry if you're passionate about it, if you have some deep-seated love for games. And I think that's amazing. So tell me, are you one of the few parents who actually encourage your kids to play games, or are you still like everyone else's like family?
Well, I don't think they need any encouragement, but I think games, particularly for young people today, I think games are part of their social lives and part of their culture. Like it's how a lot of us have been able to keep in touch with friends, even though you don't see them in classrooms. And it's taken the place of, let's say, like many years ago, like a poker night or other get-togethers that are not possible during a pandemic. And I think like after the pandemic, I think some of these habits and these ways of communicating and staying in touch will still be there. And I think maybe not to the same extent, but I think it's just part of staying connected to people.
Wow. Okay. And one of the efforts that I think was born out of your team is actually this, I think, campaign called Change the Game. So, Change the Game is an initiative from Google Play to kind of support and empower women who are gamers and creators. And I think you guys are very involved in getting more women involved in this gaming industry and being able to game in a sense. So, tell us a little bit about this project and what was the inspiration behind it in a sense.
Yeah, women on my team who were really passionate about this area. And what we had realized was it's the growth of smartphones, in particular Android, that made gaming much bigger than where it started from. So people historically played a lot of games on PC and console, but then with availability of smartphones, you could get games into the hands of almost every single person in the world. And what we found was that actually half of those gamers were women. But it was also the industry is also rooted in a very male-dominated development system, and so in terms of representation, both in the workplace but also in the games themselves, that women were not included. And also, everyone's familiar with some of the toxic culture around games as well. That's not very welcoming for, in particular, for women. And so we thought about how can we, being such a big and important player in the games ecosystem, make a difference in this area. And so we wanted to first do some research. We wanted to also figure out how we can inspire women, young women in particular, to consider the games industry if games was their passion, not be discouraged by what they are seeing, in their games or online, and hear from inspiring people that look like them in the industry. And lastly, how can we get our developer partners to join us in this initiative and make a change so that the next generation is much more inclusive in the world of games?
Oh, no, that is amazing. I'm saying this as someone who is a girl, so thank you. But also many of the students that I've had the pleasure of working with through Ascendance that develops student passions projects into actual careers. Many times I see a lot of young girls who are interested in gaming. They are really good, and I think that some of them can actually go professional, but they themselves don't see that this is a career option to them as much as sometimes I think guys do. So I find that very sad because there's so much talent among the female gaming population that I feel often goes to waste. So thank you for this amazing initiative, I'd say, by Google Play, and for listening to, I think, the amazing women on your team.
Yeah, we're just getting started. There's so much to do. And my hope is that we don't lose the opportunity to make a difference for this initiative.
Yeah, of course. And again, I feel like there is a lot that has been done in the gaming industry, but I think that this whole initiative, this whole project is a huge step in the right direction. So once again, amazing idea and amazing execution so far. I really look forward to how it's going to pan out. And if it hits Malaysia, then I would love to see many of the young girls that I know get inspired. But yeah. So we're almost towards the end of our interview. That is very, very sad. But I thought we could just end it with a few questions from our audience in a bit of a rapid fire way, if you don't mind. So,
Sounds great.
Yep. So one of the questions. So here are just a few that I thought were particularly interesting. So, I would say in a rapid fire, what would you say was the key element to being successful in the marketing world?
Understanding your audience.
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. And another one which I thought was really good. What was the best career advice that you've been given or that you'd give?
What is that there's a time when you realize that you're looking around the room around you, and there's people with much more experience and people who come from different backgrounds, but your opinion is just as valid as theirs. And they don't necessarily know or have the right answers any more so than you do. And that means that means you have the opportunity to make a difference in terms of the direction of the project that you're working on. And don't think that just because someone is older or they have a bigger title that they know better or they have the right answer. Because if that were the case, then only old people would be entrepreneurs, only old people would actually create anything and do anything, right? But that's never the case.
Okay, I love that. I'm going to get that printed out and paste it in my office so that everyone can see that. But okay, another question is, how do you stay humble and manage yourself while you're being this big director at a global company. And I agree, you are like super humble and super kind to actually come on the show. So how do you actually stay humble in a sense for all of us who are growing in our careers?
Well, I feel extraordinarily lucky. I feel like lucky to have gotten the opportunity to go to Penn, to get the academic and job opportunities I've had, the mentors I've had, just the upbringing I've had. I just feel extremely privileged, and I know that so much of what I achieve is not really just mine. While it might be my work, it is a function of the support network around me, whether it's my family, my parents, the educators and mentors along the way that will help me there. And it's really important for me to also be there and support the next generation, and to help folks have a chance and give them the opportunities that I was able to have and make the most of, so that deserving people can really have a chance to shine.
Okay, last two questions. By the way, amazing answer, but last two questions, I'd say number one, what was one thing you wish you would have told to your younger self when you were just starting out?
I would have, let's see, I would have told myself to try more things and to be less afraid of failure. Because as I mentioned earlier, it only becomes harder over time, right? Like if you have all of a sudden a big salary and an important job title, all of a sudden it feels like you have more to lose if you take a risk somewhere else. And so the best time to take those risks is earlier on in your career, where you can start over or you can try brand new things, because also expectations of you are also lower, right? Because they understand that when you're coming out of college, they don't expect you to be an expert in your job, and they expect you to be in a learning and growing environment. But if they hire you for a big expensive position at their company, they expect you to give them all the answers. And so I think the expectations are different, but also people's risk tolerance changes over time. So take more risks.
Okay, very nice, very nice. And I think that just to end it all, you mentioned something about giving back to the community, building the younger generation. And I know that we actually had a few business owners that I sneaked in to the show because they just really wanted to hear from you, and they think, and it was an opportunity that I think I would not have missed in their shoes either. But to all of the adults, our parents, teachers, lecturers, current business owners, current executives at companies, why is it important to build the next generation and to take a stand in the ways that you have, in a sense?
It's part of the recognition, as I mentioned, that like I don't have all the answers, and we rely on the energy and creativity of different perspectives and the new perspectives, and people who have grown up and are adopting these new technologies and using them in new and creative ways to help us understand like what is going on and what the future is going to be like. And if we don't support them, I think we become stagnant as well. I think so. There's a self-interest part of it, and there's also a giving back part of it.
Okay, I guess that's a more than enough reason to do anything. If both your self-interest and the interest of everyone else align, then give back to the young, build the next generation. And amazing words. Thank you so much for all of your amazing answers, and thank you so much for being on our show today. It's been a true pleasure to host you, and I hope you had a great time as well.
It's a great honor to be on the show. I remember listening to this station back when it was not on Discord, when I was a college student myself.
Oh God! Now you should have. Thank God you told me now when the interview is over. That would have been so much pressure if you told me earlier. But that's nice to know, and hopefully some of you listening here today will be back when you guys have hit success and will be interviewed as well. And you'd quote our amazing guest speaker and said something like, "Hey, I remember Albert Cheng said this when I was listening on WQHS radio." So, and that changed my life. So certainly this interview has been huge for me, and I hope that all of you listening today have huge takeaways as well. So once again, thank you, Albert. Lovely talking to you, and hope to see you around.
Thank you. Great to be
Okay.
here.
Okay. So, for all of you who are listening, once again, it's been amazing having you all on Changing Reality. If you don't know, Changing Reality goes on at 10 p.m. EST here at WQHS Radio, Penn Student Run Radio, right here in our lovely campus. Currently on Discord until the pandemic, but it only gives us more of the opportunity to interview amazing people from all around the world. Changing Reality in specific focuses on interviewing Penn alumni, inspiring individuals from all across the world to uncover their stories of how, in the little ways that they themselves grow, they change the reality around them. So thank you once again, everyone, for listening. Do join us again next week, same time, same place. We'll be having another amazing speaker with us, also a Penn alumni. This time we'll be speaking to one of the directors of employee relations at Amazon. So don't miss that too. But for now, I think it's been an amazing session here today. So to just end it off, I think it would not be fair if we did not end it with yet another gaming soundtrack. So this is a song by Panic at the Disco. It was actually used in I think one of the Batman games called Mercenary. Enjoy. See you next week. This is DJ Harsh signing off. Bye.